What?
Hi, Dove. How are you? Long time no see.
I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
I'm going to put myself on mute since I'm in a pretty public area in my house.
Okay.
So,
very good. Okay.
I know I'm early.
I guess we can get started. We're at the very top of Yud, I believe, 10a. So the Mishnah had said, "Hahed yotofer kedarko." An amateur can sew regular. It doesn't need to do any special adjustments for Chol Moed. Hechidami hedges. The Gemara wants to know what does that mean, an amateur? Amrit ve'Rav Yanai. They said in the school of Rav Yanai, Kol she'eni yochel lahotzi malo machat basachas. An amateur is somebody who can't sew the length of the needle with one go. Okay, so I don't really, I mean, I can kind of visualize it. You know, the needle goes in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. If you can do that in kind of one go, that's as long as the length of the needle, then you're a pro. Anything less than that, you're an amateur. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina Amar, and the reason that you have to do an amateur way is that the provision for being allowed to do work on Chol Moed excludes a professional job. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina Amar, Kol sheni yochel lachavein imra b'chefes chaluka. What's an amateur sewer? If you can't make an even hem at the bottom of your garment. Okay. And the Mishnah continues for ha'uman machlif. A pro can do machlif. What is that? My machlif. More wants to know. Rabbi Yochanan Amar mafsia. It means sewing in very wide, very far away stitches, like as far away as a big step. Okay, like a foot apart, let's say, or more really. That's obviously not a pro sewing job. That's just a temporary job. Rabbi Rashmuel Amar Shine Kalbasa. The width of like the teeth of a dog. So it's unclear if it means the space between the teeth of a dog, which are not like human teeth, they're not close together, but that's not very far apart still. Or does it mean like the whole mouth width of a dog, which is more comparable to the wide step, which makes more sense to me, but then it's like, it's not really phrased right. It should be the mouth of a dog. So it's a little curious what what this means. Another possibility is not the space between them, but like that it's not an even row. So human teeth, you got a straight line across the top of your teeth, but dog teeth is more like a wavy line. So maybe that's what it means. Masargi nasamitas, and you can so imagine like the support for your mattress is you've got cross pieces and long pieces, right? Of if it's not a solid thing, but you're talking about like a web of support bars or straps or something, right? So that's a chassiver. That's like a weaving, right? You've got cross pieces going one direction and the other direction. So you can do that you can tie up or insert the supports of your bed on Chol Moed. And the Mishnah went on to say, and also mematchin asamitas, and you can also tighten the bed, is what we've translated it. So let's see what do these terms mean exactly. Gemara wants to know. My misargin, my mematchin. What are these two things? Kesser of Dini, or Dimi said, Pligi bar Rav Chia bar Abba Ravasi. There's a dispute between Rav Chia and Ravasi about what these means. But Tarvayu Mishmei Chizki of Rabbi Yochanan, and both of them had the same source, but they differed on what the source said. Chanam, one says Misargin Shasiva Erev. Misargin means crosswise, right? Crosswise and lengthwise, right? So that's like weaving, right? Because weaving is one direction crossed by the other direction. So you can do that for your bed because presumably you want to use the bed on Chol Moed. Umamatchin, what does umamatchin mean? Shasi below air, just one direction without the cross pieces. Okay, so v'chadamar, so both of those are permitted. V'chadamar, in the other opinion,
I'm running around. I've got a 3-year-old I'm running after. So if I disappear, it's only because of the 3-year-old.
Sure. Okay, no problem. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. B'chadamar, and the other says Misargin Shasi below air. Misargin, what does that mean? Just one direction. So what's mamatchin? What is that? Not that you're putting in the supports where they weren't there before, you're tightening them. So your mattress was sagging, the supports were sagging, so you tighten them so you have a more comfortable bed. And that's permitted. So Gemara says, Ani, can that be the dispute? Vahatani Rav Tachlifa Rashal, but Rav Tachlifa taught V'shavin she'en mafshir chavalim l'chadchila. Both of these opinions agree that you can't twist new ropes, like what's the word for twisting ropes? Like for creating ropes, you twist them, strings, pieces of it around each other. You can't do that to begin with.
Braid.
Sorry, braiding. Yes, thank you. That's the word. So Bishlam Lamad Diamar Misargin Shasiva Erev. So okay, so the one that says the opinion that says Misargin means crossways, both directions. You're allowed to Lamatech means to do it only in one direction, right? So then we understand why Rav Tachlifa has to come along and say that regardless, both of them say you can't twist braid new ropes. Okay, that even though Rav Meir says that the bed you can do, crossways and lengthwise, but that doesn't apply to ropes. That's a more, I don't know, severe or more creative or something. That's more so than putting the supports for a mattress.
So the Erev goes in first, and then the Shti goes in second, and then
I can never remember. But one,
it says the Shti is the lengthwise, and the Erev is the widthwise, according to the translation here.
Okay, fine. Okay.
But it's the one that goes in second here. You could, because that's the one that tightens it. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah. Okay. So I understand why Rav Tachlifa would say, okay, so one of them allows you to do both directions on the mattress support, but still neither would allow you to braid a new rope. But the one opinion that we saw that said that Misargin is just one direction and that the other one is tightening. Okay, so Hashta Shasiva Ero Amalo. So according to that, we already know that both opinions would forbid, even the one that is less stringent, the one that is more stringent would forbid he would allow doing in one direction, but forbid doing in both directions. So clearly a rope is, braiding a rope is more than that. So of course, why would Rav Tachlifa have to tell us that you can't braid new ropes? Asha Skor says, yeah, good question. It doesn't answer it. Okay. But still continuing this discussion of what these terms mean, the Sargin and the Matachin. Rav Nachman said to Rabbi Chia, below Erev. Is there really such an opinion that that Misargin means putting the ropes in only the one direction? the supports in one direction. Well, it's not. We have a Mishnah. Omer Hamita Misha Yisrog Ba Shlosha Batim. When is a bed considered to be complete? What's the difference? Like if it's a kli, then it can have tuma, right? So when is it a bed? When Misha Yisrog Ba Shlosha Batim. When you have three boxes, I guess you'd say, boxes, put crossways. Okay, so in other words, you've already got the one direction, and when you start doing the other direction, once you've got three squares, then it's a bed. Okay, so if that's the case, then he uses the word Misha Yisrog. So clearly, Misha Yisrog means crosswise, right? That you start going in the second direction. So how can you say that? How can the one opinion say that Misha Yisrog means only one direction? It's clear from this source about the bed and Tumah that it means two directions. So Gemara says, okay, so we have to reinterpret the whole argument. Elkiasa Rabin. Now, Rabin came along and said, "Be misargin koliyama lokli yedishliver." Everybody understands that misargin means both directions, crosswise, right? It's really weaving the supports together. Elikiklige. So what are they arguing about? B'mamatchin. The argument was really about the term mamatchin. What does that mean? Marsav mamatchin shesiblo erev. One said that mamatchin is if you only do one direction. So we all agree that misargin, the Mishnah allows you to do, that's in two directions, and mamatchin means one direction. Umar savar shimay rafim mamatacha. The other holds it means tightening. Okay, well that doesn't make any sense. Meisvei, they asked that. Misargin samita v'ensorich lomar shemamatchin. There's a brisa that says you can do misargin, and certainly you can do mamatchin. So, and Rabbi Yossi Omer Mamachin level Masargin, but no, you can do Mamachin, but you can't do Masargin. So, Yeshamim, and some say, and Mamachin Kol Yikar. You can't do Mamachin at all. All right, so how do we price this out? So, if you want to say that Mamachin means just the one direction, Hainu da Asu Yeshomim Lifluge. So that's why there's a Yeshomim. That's why there's another opinion. You know what? No, that's not true. That the Yeshomim says you can't do that. Okay, but if you want to say that the Mishnah's permission to do mematchin means just tightening, right? The Yesh Omrim mematcho nami lo. Does that mean that the Yesh Omrim, that the other opinion argues on that? That doesn't seem reasonable, because that seems to be less of a problem than than putting the supports in the first place. So why would somebody object to tightening?
So the idea is anytime you see Yesh Omrim, that means there's a machloket?
Yeah, right, because otherwise what is it doing there? Obviously it's coming to
Right.
opposing opinion.
Right. Okay.
So opposing opinion doesn't really make sense. So the answer is actually it does make sense. Keva de efshar lemimle b'man. You know what? There's another way. You don't have to tighten it, right? Tightening maybe should be acceptable because you want to sleep in the bed that night. But you know what? There's a less severe way that you could use the bed that night. You could like pile up clothes underneath it, right? You don't have to do that in order to sleep in your bed. There's another way you could sleep in your bed. So that's why the Yesh Omrim, the other opinion, would say that if that were the only way to do it, sure. But since there's an easier way or a less severe way to do it, then you should do it that way.
So it's a tircha. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a tircha thing.
Yeah, lo terchen. You shouldn't exert yourself too much. So if there's a less difficult way to do it, it seems to me like piling up enough clothes under your bed might be.
I don't think it's the less difficult way, but it's a less permanent way.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Because once you tighten it, then it's going to stay tight, I imagine. But the clothing is just a temporary measure.
Right, and so since we're only allowing you to do it because you're going to use it on the holiday, so
Right.
everything is permitted, but not a more permanent thing. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, next Mishnah. Mamidin tanur v'kirayim v'rechayim b'moed. You can set up a stove. So tanur and kirayim are two types of stove, but basically they're just distinguished by how large they are. And a set of millstones. You can build those on Chol Moed. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ein mechabshin asarechayim b'tchila. You can't gouge the millstones. So if you think about how millstones work, you've got two discs, one on top of the other, okay, and you turn the top one so that anything that's in between gets crushed, right? Now, if both are, it's a smooth surface against a smooth surface, like you won't get anything in there, right? So what you do is, apparently, you make some little ridges in the bottom one, okay, so that the grain or whatever gets trapped in there, and then as you rotate the top disc, then that affects the crushing of the grain. Okay.
Okay.
No?
If the top one is smooth, how is it gonna?
Well, they're apparently, I guess they're not very deep ridges, right? They're very shallow ridges, so the top sticks up above the ridge, and that's how it gets crushed, I imagine.
Just like a coffee grinder or something. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, my grasp of how these things work is very tenuous. I have to say.
Yeah, I have a manual coffee grinder, and there's like a little space, the more you tighten it, the finer the grind. So I guess that's kind of the idea.
Okay.
Like rigid.
Yeah. So Rabbi Yehuda says you can't make those ridges. Okay, my mechabshin. So Gemara wants to understand what are these ridges. Rabbi Yehuda Omer menaker rechaya means what we said, cutting the ridges in the stone. Rabbi Chil says bas eina. So the top millstone has a hole in the center where you pour in the grain, right? So Rabbi Chil says mechabshin means cutting that hole in the top stone. Okay. By the way, it sounds like a lot of work to me, cutting, ridges or holes in stone. It sounds pretty, like a lot of effort, a lot of tircha. But
yeah, but you if you want to make bread or something, I mean, you got to do it, right?
Yeah. So Mesve, so they ask a question.
But isn't it also a lot of permanence?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Rarely. So that speaks to what I was saying about the garments under the bed. There's a way to do it temporarily, so it makes sense to do it that way on right. But how else you can't? There's no way to do it temporarily.
Yeah, but this is ochel nefesh, though. This is different, right? This is you're allowed to eat food. I mean, you're allowed to do preparatory acts for eating food, right?
Yeah, but only food that you're going to eat on that day. You can't.
Maybe you're going to eat this on the day. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Say again.
Maybe you are going to eat it on the day.
Exactly, that's the point. But so the question is, like, can you do it in a temporary way so that it's only for today or tomorrow? And you probably can't, because like, how are you going to do a temporary ridge in the stone?
I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
So they ask a question about the second opinion, that it means cutting the hole in the middle. Median tanur b'kirayim v'rechayim b'moed. You can set up the stove on Chol Moed or the millstone, as long as you don't finish it, leave it somewhat incomplete. Okay, that's what Rabbi Eliezer says. The rabbi said, no, you can finish it. Rabbi Eliezer Mishma, and Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, you can set up a new one, or you can carve the ridges in an old one. So in other words, that's kind of the same thing, right? In the new one, you leave it unfinished by not doing the ridges, or maybe not doing all the ridges. Like, it seems like if you don't do any ridges, it's not very useful. So maybe you don't do all the ridges. And if you have an old one that needs to be re-ridged, then you can do that. Even though that, I guess, would be finishing it, but you need to do something to make it work again. And some say you can't do the ridge at all. Okay, so what's the problem? If you say that Rabbi Yehuda that what the Mishnah allowed mechabshin is to do the ridges, that's what you would have. You'd be if you have a worn out millstone, you have to do new ridges. That makes sense. But if you say Mechamshi means the hole in the middle, Yeshana Basaina Lamali, like if you have an old one, it's already got a hole, right? Like it's what do you do? What do you need to do with the hole to make it work again? So our answer is the hole's not big enough, right? They God doesn't know how. Maybe it wasn't finished right the first time. Maybe it's not. You bought this millstone and then you realize, this thing isn't working. You know why? Because the hole in the middle isn't wide enough. So you widen it out. So that's where you would need. It's not that it once had a hole and now has no hole. That's impossible. But it has a hole, and you need a larger hole. Rav Huna Shamei Lahu Gavra de Kaminaka Rechai B'chol Hamoed. There's a story of Rav Huna that he heard about somebody who was cutting the ridges in the millstone Chol Hamoed. Amar Manhai, he says, who is this guy? Itachil Gufei de Kamachil Chula Demoed. Let his body be desecrated because he desecrates Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara says Savar Laki Yeshomrim. So that must be the Rav Huna holds like the Yeshomrim that we saw before, that you can't do this kibush, this ridge carving at all. So that's why he criticized the guy who was doing the ridges. Darsh Rav Chama taught, no krin rechaim b'moed. You can cut these ridges in a millstone on Chol Moed. Mishum Rabbi Meir, by the name of Rabbi Meir, it was said, Afilu su sharochev alav b'chamar sharochev alav mutar lu totzi pranayim b'chol shemoed. You can cut the nails of a beast of burden that you're using on Chol Moed. Why would you have to do that? Because they can walk better, right? So, you've got to get from A to B, but you realize that because your donkey needs a pedicure, he's not going to make it from A to B unless he gets the pedicure. So that's why you can do that on Chol Moed. But if you have a donkey that turns a millstone, then you can't give him his pedicure because he can, he'll make it. Like, just because he'll be in, the discomfort won't kick in to the extent that he can't do his job. Therefore, you cannot do the pedicure for this donkey.
Seems like the thing about grooving the millstone, it has to do more with finishing than it does with tircha, because as you said, it might be more tircha to do that, but if it already was once finished, right, then you can't refinish it. You know what I mean? Maybe it has to do with
as part of the making sure that you don't do it in a complete or professional way. It's kind of part
if it already was once complete, then you can kind of recomplete it, so to speak. That's you know what I mean?
Well, so my interpretation was that you can complete if the only thing it needs is to be completed, then, and you can't use it without it being completed, then that's what you have to do.
Right, but it was an old one, so it was once once functional. Now it's not so functional, so you can make it functional again, as opposed to a new one. You can't make a new one that's functional.
Yeah, okay. I accept that. Makes sense. Rabbi Yehuda Shari Lemishkol Tufrei Lechamer Derechaya, and Rabbi Yehuda even allowed you to give your pedicure to even the mill donkey. And to build the millstones, to set up the millstones, and to build the mill, and to build the frame of the mill, and to build even a barn. So basically, anything that contributed to, even if it was remotely connected to preparing the mill, so you could mill grain for Yantiv, he allowed all these things. Rav Sharla Saruke Susya. Rav allowed you to comb the horse's hair. Right? The explanation given here is that you want your horse to look nice. You don't want your horse to look unkempt. You're riding around on Yom Tov. It's like you should wear a nice suit. You should ride a nice horse. That's why you can. So it's considered as something that's done for the holiday. Ulamivne akarpita, and he also allowed you to build the stable, ulamivne itzava, and to build a chair or bench for people to sit on. Again, obviously, it's something that you could sit on Yom Tov. Rava Shar Lemishkal Dema Levehema B'chol Moed. Rava allowed bloodletting of an animal. So bloodletting, as you've probably seen before in the Gemara, it was a common medical procedure. And apparently it was done for animals too, so you could do that for an animal on Chol Moed. Abaye says, I have a support for you. Here's another brisa. Makizin dam levehema. You can bloodlet for an animal. You don't have to refrain from any kind of medical treatment for an animal on Chol Moed. Rava allowed you to iron clothes on Chol Moed. My Tama, why? Mostly had you to, because any idiot can take an iron. It doesn't take a professional. Amar Yitzchak Barami Amar Chisa. Yitzchak said, "Kiture bire asir," but depends what kind of ironing. If it translates as pleating a sleeve, that you're not allowed to do my tamamasi, because that takes a pro, right? Just a straight, shirt or pants or whatever. A flat front is easy to do, but something that's pleated takes a pro. So that you can't do on Chol Moed. Amar Rava, manda maskil ara. Somebody who's clearing land. Okay, this piece is a little confusing. It's very unclear what there's many different views of what we're talking about here or what's going on. But basically the idea is that to do threshing, like to do a threshing floor, you need a flat piece of land or a floor, whatever. You need something flat. Okay, so can you dig and shovel the earth in such a way that you're going to make a flat threshing floor? Well, the Gemara seems to be that depends. If you're doing it in such a way that is just to make a threshing floor, which you don't need all that much space, fine. But if you're doing it in such a way that it looks like you're plowing, okay, and plowing is something that you're not going to benefit from the plowing today on Yom Tov. You're going to benefit from it later on, right, when the crop grows. So that you can't do. So now let's see if we can make sense of the Gemara. If about clearing land, adata deve dare. If you're doing it with the intention of making a floor for threshing, shari, that's okay. Adata de ara, but if you're doing it to cultivate the land, asir, that you're not allowed to do. So how do you tell the difference? Mule b'mulya. If you're digging if you have a pile of dirt and you put the dirt on the pile of dirt, so you build up the pile of dirt. In other words, by smoothing out the adjacent ground, you're just adding to a mound that's already there. Or if you're digging a hole and putting the dirt in the hole, that looks like you're doing it for making a flat ground. Shakal mulya v'shada binsa. But if you're taking a mound and filling in a hole, adata diyar, then it looks like you're plowing or preparing to that's I guess that's what the Gemara is envisioning that perhaps as a wider use of the area. So a wider use of the area means, you just don't want this for a threshing floor. You want it to grow of crops. Okay, V'yamar Rava, and Rava says also, well, if you're clearing stuff from your land, right? You're clearing like pieces of wood or weeds or whatever. If you're doing it to gather wood for fuel, to light a fire, to cook or whatever, so that's for immediate use. Sorry, that's allowed. But if you're trying to clear the land for agriculture, asir, same idea. That's prohibited because that's not for today. How can you tell? If you're only taking the larger pieces and leaving the smaller ones, so then that looks like you're gathering good firewood. But if you're taking all the wood, then you're clearing the land. Okay, so you don't need a lot of little tiny twigs for kindling. You just need for building a fire, just picking up the bigger pieces.
So is the issue the intention, or the issue is what it looks like, your intention?
It's like you're revealing your intention. Like the way you're allowed to do it is only if you're in such a way that you're revealing your true intention.
So it's what your intention
So
appears to an onlooker.
Yeah, but it sounds like even if the
Action looks like to an onlooker who can infer what your intention is.
Yeah, but it sounds like there doesn't even have to be an onlooker. It's like, look at yourself in the mirror instead what it sounds to me like. It's like,
Right.
I think of an example. If I don't know, sometimes you can tell yourself I'm doing it for whatever purpose, but the way you're doing it, your true intention.
Okay.
Yeah. Rava furthermore said, Haimad de Pasach Mayel Are. If you're like opening a sluice gate to let water onto your field, okay, so irrigating your field, no good, right? But another purpose for this could be you want to catch fish, okay? So like if you let the water out of you open up the gates of the dam, you let enough water in that some fish will come too, and then the water runs off and the fish are stuck and you've got fish for dinner, right? So adopted the cover, if you're doing it to get fish in the water or out of the water, sorry, that's a lot of adopted yar, but if it's for watering your land, then that's not permitted. Hey, how can you tell? Pasach trey babe. If you opened two sluice gates, like the higher elevation at one end and the lower at the other end, then it's obvious that you want the water to come onto your field with the fish, and you want the water to drain and leave the fish stranded. Okay, so if you're opening the top and the bottom, it's clear that you're trying to catch fish. But pasachad baba, but we only open up the one, right? Then the water will. Then you're not helping yourself catch fish, because the water will come in with the fish and the fish will still be swimming around. They won't be stranded. It's only if you open the second one. So if you only open the one, adopted yard, then it's clear that you're really to is water your field. Rava says, Haiman de Pashach Dikla. If you're pruning a palm tree, if you're doing it because you want to get the coconuts or whatever, not coconuts, but you want to get the leaves or whatever it is for your animals, sure, to feed, sure, that's allowed. Adopted because that's for today. Adopted Dikla, but if you want to prune the palm tree because you want to improve the health of the palm tree, that's not allowed. How can you tell? So if you cut all the leaves from one side, adopted the chebasa. So clearly you're not doing it for the health of the tree, because that's not a good way to promote the health of the tree. But if you go all around the tree and take off a little from here, a little from there, then that's clear that you're really doing it for the health of the tree, and that's forbidden. Rava said, if you've got dates that are still not ripe, migzarin hushari, so harvesting them from the tree is allowed. I might seen who, but to press them is not. Okay, so what's the story with pressing dates? So apparently pressing of the dates, meaning putting a heavy weight on them, was a way to dry them out, but without allowing them to rot. Or so I don't know. I don't really quite get this, but I mean, press dates are a thing, right? So I suppose that part of the drying process, if you just let them dry in the open air, maybe they don't dry properly, they get rotten. But if you press them, then now the thing is, the pressing takes longer than the day. It takes several days, right? It takes a while, so it's not for Yom Tov, right? So if you're just cutting them and putting them out to dry, then that could happen. That could be ready on Yom Tov. But if you press them, then you're showing that that's a longer process.
That's what we're talking about Moed.
On Chol Moed, yeah, that's right. We're talking about on Chol Moed. Rav Papa Amar, but Rav Papa says, Kaman Dematle, since they might become wormy if they don't get pressed, then we have a different consideration. then it's davar have, right? It's like a loss, right? It's a financial loss. If you don't press them, then you're going to lose the produce. You might have a few dates that you'll eat tomorrow, but most of the dates will go rotten. And so that's a davar have. That's a financial loss, and therefore it's permitted. Rava said, you can't do any kind of business on Chol Moed. Rav Yassi says, if you're going to incur a loss, if you don't do the business, then it's permitted. So let's see an example. Ravina Havale Hahu Iska. Ravina had a business transaction. He had merchandise that he could sell for 6,000 zuz on Chol Moed. But he passed up the opportunity to sell it because it was Chol Moed. And you know what happened? And he ended up selling it for 12,000. So the implication appears to be that he might have been allowed to sell it on Chol Moed because it's unclear that he might have had to sell it for a lower price after Chol Moed. And in fact, what happened though was that my reading of the Gemara is that he was rewarded by being able to sell them for even more after Yativ, right? So by not availing himself of the opportunity to do business on Chol Moed, he actually profited. So
if you know that if you're going to have to be able to sell it for less after Chol Moed, then you can do it, right?
Right.
But sometimes you don't know. I mean, it's like the economy can be, you don't. But I guess.
Look, I think it's no surprise. It will come as no surprise that most people that I know, don't really observe Chol Moed to the extent that the Gemara is describing it. And basically, as I understand it, the reason is that it is a you'll lose your job, or you'll definitely suffer financial consequences. So that's why people.
It depends what it means to suffer a loss. Like
Right.
If I don't work and I don't get paid, did I suffer a loss?
Right. So that we'll see a couple of stories coming up in the Gemara, which that's not quite clear. If it means that you're gonna, you'll actually you have something and it will deteriorate, or is it an opportunity cost? Right? Is it just the loss of an opportunity to profit? Right. We'll see. I think there are two views about it. Right. That some say that it has to be an actual deterioration of something that you own. And another view would be that no, even the missed opportunity to profit from thing would be considered. So let's see these other stories. Ravina had a claim against people who live on the banks of the Shanvasa River. Also, so he went to Ravashi, Amar, and he said, can I travel over there to go and ask them to pay? Right? Like maybe I know their home because it's Chol Moed, right? I know their home with their families. So can I go and try to recoup my whatever loan or whatever it is that they owe me? And he says, since you know they're there today, they may be gone tomorrow. So maybe tomorrow they won't be there. Then it's allowed because it's like something that you lose. So here's a case of where I guess where you have something that you could recoup today, but tomorrow you might not be able to. So that seems to be a deterioration of something that you own. Like you have a less chance of collecting it later on. Tanya Nami Gabi Avodah Zarah Ki Hagava. And we have a similar ruling regarding Avodah Zarah. What does that mean? Holchin Li'Yerid Shalakum. You can go to this. I guess the best example would be like a Christmas market. Okay, you can go to so the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. One of the first things it says is you can't buy from idol worshippers around their holiday because they will be using the profit for idol worship. Okay, so but here the store says you can go to I'm going to call it a Christmas market. You can buy whatever you want to buy. And then you can also like register your deeds for these things in the idolater's courts or registry offices or whatever. Because you're saving it. You're saving your money from them. Like if you buy a piece of property and you don't register it, right? Then you're at risk, right? They're going to say, "I never bought it. I never." So the only way to protect your investment is to follow the procedure. So similar to Chol Moed, it's like if you're going to lose money on it, then we're not going to insist on the finer points of the law.
Oh, this is not a Chol Moed. This is just in general.
Okay. Rav Sharluchia Barashi, Lemigdal Oare B'chol Moed. Rav allowed Chia Baravashi to make fishnets on Chol Moed. My Tama, why? Masahed Yahu, because anybody can make a fishnet piece of cake. It doesn't require a professional. Aval Islay Aser, but a bird net, that is he didn't allow. My Tama Masayuman, because a bird net for some reason is much harder to make, and you can't do professional work on Chol Moed. Rav Yehuda Sharla Ame Tanura. Rav Yehuda allowed this guy Ami, who was an oven maker, Lamigdal Tanuri, to build ovens on Chol Moed. Rabba Bar Ashbi and Rabba Bar Ashbi Lamigdal Maholasa, to make sieves. Okay, Aini, is that right? Vahatane. So this is a little odd because it seems to be their profession, right? Vahatane Rabba Bar Shmuel. Vishavin she'en building taner l'chachila. Also, we have this statement of Rabbah who says you can't build an oven from scratch. So lakasha, Gemara says not a problem. When you're building an oven, it has to dry, right? They're making it out of clay, basically, right? So in the summer, it's going to dry quickly, and it's likely that you'll still be able to use it for yontif. Right, but in the winter, like Sukkot, let's say, when maybe it's already rainy, damp outside is going to take the oven a lot longer to harden, and then the yontif will be over by the time you can use it. Then you can't use it. So that's why you have one source that says you can on Pesach, and the other that says on Sukkot, or maybe it's the other way around. Pesach is the end of the rainy season, so if it's still rainy on Pesach. Whatever it is, if it's rainy, then you can't do it. But if it's hot and dry, then you can do it because then it will be completed on time. And we will pick up here tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Dov.
Okay, Shavua everybody.
Good talk. Thank you.
You,
Shavua tov.
Tov.